Audio.
Yeah. We get some else. Yeah. The project design stuff.
All right, we are on and live. Folks, let's call the meeting to order, please. Sam?
Adequate notice of this meeting was given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by transmitting the meeting notice to the official newspapers, providing a copy of the agenda to the newspapers, and posting a copy of the agenda at the hall.
Thanks so much. Could I please have roll call?
Doherty.
Here.
Herb.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Redding. Here. Lino. Tomco.
Here.
Branson.
Here.
Denblinger.
Here.
Eckel.
Here. And I do want to point out for the members of the board that Ted Carroll is here this evening. Our attorney for the evening, filling in for Steve. Moving on to the approval of minutes, please, of the regular meeting, February 26th, 2025. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes?
I'll move the minutes.
Jean has moved the minutes. Is there a second?
Second, John.
Thank you, John. Doherty? There are no comments or corrections? Could I have a vote, please?
Doherty.
Yes.
Herb.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Meyer.
Same.
Redding.
Yes.
Tomco.
Yes.
Branson.
Yes.
Denblinger.
Abstain.
Eckel.
Yes. Moving on to public comments. I don't see anyone here in the audience, so
I noticed that this was removed from the agenda because the applicant will not be here this evening, but for the Dickman matter, I just thought that it would be an appropriate time to make this announcement
absolutely,
here.
absolutely.
This was originally scheduled for a public hearing this evening. The applicant's attorney had sent us correspondence earlier today that due to the applicant's expert witnesses not being available, they have requested an adjournment. The board is at liberty to discuss whether they would accept this adjournment, but I have reviewed the applicant's proof of service and notice of publication in advance of tonight's meeting, and I would have concluded that they would have jurisdiction to hear the public hearing for this matter. If the board so wishes to adjourn this matter to the April meeting, that being the public hearing, I would just make a public comment. I would make a statement to the public stating that the public hearing for this matter has been adjourned to the April meeting, and you will not receive any further notice. So the board, if they so choose, can accept the adjournment request for the public hearing in this matter to be moved to the April meeting.
Do we need to vote on that, or can we?
You don't need to vote on that.
I think this seems quite appropriate. They were unable to get their entire team here this evening, so it is adjourned to the April meeting.
Point of information, you said they don't need to renotice, is that?
That's correct. They provided adequate proof of notice and proof of publication in advance of the meeting, and they won't have to renotice for the next meeting. Without getting too far into the application, there was also correspondence that was sent by Rob Clerico, who is the board engineer for this board, and there was just some clarification that will be addressed as to the architectural plans that were submitted. So just letting you know that that would be addressed by the applicant's attorney. He acknowledged that. So at this time, just making a statement to the public, this will advise members of the public that the public hearing for this matter has been adjourned to the April meeting, and you will not receive any further notice.
Thank you.
Very well.
Once again, we have no one here in the public, although we are on Zoom, so who knows who's watching us. But that has now been clarified for anyone watching, and I'm going to close the public comment portion. Here in the public to speak to us in person. Moving on to the Housing Committee update. I'm going to, I think, look to Darlene to give us that very brief update.
I met with the Affordable Housing Subcommittee before the meeting tonight. We will continue our discussion after the meeting tonight. And my team will begin to put together, we've already started the housing plan, the demographic section. Once we get some direction from the subcommittee, we'll begin to put together the framework of the plan. So stay tuned for that. We will also be discussing timeline, because as you guys have heard, the deadline to not only draft council endorse it is June 30th, which will be here before you know it. That's all I have.
All right, stay tuned. There will likely be some special meetings called between now and that deadline, because given the trajectory of the deadlines, as Albert Cruz, the borough attorney, pointed out in an email that I was copied to, Mr. Darlene and several members, possibly all of council, I'm not sure who else was on that. There really is no possible way for us to hit all those deadlines without calling some special meetings. So, yay, special meetings, look for them.
Darlene, what's actually in that June thing that council has to approve? Like, what's the content of that?
So under the statute, we have to discuss various demographic factors. They have no bearing on our obligation, but we're just required to include a host of demographic factors on population, housing, and employment. Then we discuss the obligations that the borough has to address. Then we put in all of our mechanisms. So we'll have the mechanisms from the third round housing plan that are carrying forward, and then any new mechanisms to address rehab and fourth round obligation. Attached to that would be any ordinance, draft versions of ordinances, not adopted ordinances. So if we have to do any rezoning, those will have to be attached to it. An updated spending plan has to be attached to it. An updated marketing plan has to be attached to it. Ooh, hopefully you have a new municipal housing liaison, Mayor.
We do, we should have we've appointed a group that does that for us.
Nope, so that's your administrative agent. So
Okay.
Brenda was, so you have to have do you have a resolution, Sam?
Yes,
Okay, good.
Okay.
Can you send me a copy of that?
yes.
Wonderful. All right, you already done one thing.
Okay.
So we have to attach all those resolutions because by law, we're required to have a municipal housing liaison, which has to be a staff member. On top of that, there's some other documents. So we're looking at probably a document that's somewhere between 50 to 200 pages long. With all the appendices.
So a question, as you noted, June 30th isn't that far away. I would point out that the name of this group is the Planning Board, and we do zoning thing, both of which came up in your description and this description here. And although we appreciate that our chair was included, there's a bunch of us here who form the Planning Board. And I don't know that any of the rest of us have been informed, involved in any way. And I'm just wondering why, since we are that board and it does involve zoning and planning, can we be more inclusive in communications and participation?
So I will tell you, I asked for subcommittee and I do that in all of my towns because it's easier to wrangle a subcommittee than a whole entire board.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the way they set up this legislation, they have forced the towns to file a declaratory judgment action.
Mhm.
And so essentially we are in litigation. So some of this is also strategy discussions,
Mhm.
which if we did it as a full planning board, we'd be in a public session disclosing strategy for opinion in all of my towns, that you have a subcommittee. And I always ask that it's combined of members of planning board and council, because what I never want to happen is, and this did happen in one town, in the third round, I was only working with one entity. And because I need the blessing of both entities in order to be able to submit that to the program, which is they've replaced the Council on Affordable Housing. And so I always ask for members of both bodies, because if I don't have representation from both bodies, I never want to be appearing in front of the planning board. You may approve it as a master plan document, but if I go to council, because it is the only master plan that contemplates expenditures, that's why council has to endorse under the law. I don't want to go to council and they say, Darlene, what are you doing? We're not going to endorse this because we don't agree with the spending plan. We don't agree with the rezoning. We don't agree with the whatever. We have just wasted a boatload of time and money to miss the deadline, which has other exposure items included with it. So that's why I recommend subcommittees in all of my towns, because of all of those factors. They haven't made this process easy.
Darlene, so what decision point does this board have, or does it all reside with the council at this point?
So the planning board is the housing element is a master plan document. So
Right.
ultimately it's yours to adopt. The only reason any governing body gets to have a say is because it will contemplate expenditures. And now it's also gonna have ordinances attached to it. So let's face it, if the governing body is not on board with the ordinances we propose, once again, we've wasted time and money.
But so this board will review and approve
You would
the
adopt the housing plan.
housing plan, and then we would make decisions about, or we would render opinion as to whether the ordinances are not inconsistent with the master plan. Does that sound right?
We would eventually do that. So the
Okay,
way
but not
they
by
set
June.
this up, not by June, that's,
Okay.
that's the only saving
Okay.
grace. So we just have to have ordinances drafted by
Okay.
June. The program will then review the housing plan and the ordinances, and if they find the ordinance is acceptable, we have to adopt the ordinances by March of 2026.
Oh,
So, but to your point, Gene, those ordinances would have to come back here for master plan
Eventually.
consistency
okay.
before they go to council for second reading.
Which again is the June 30th. I'm.
No, so
Okay.
ordinances wouldn't have to be adopted until March of 26.
Okay. And again, when it comes to strategy and, legal issues, right, there are executive sessions where certain items don't have to be, right? I mean, that's why we have closed and executive sessions for some things. Again, I'm just asking for more participation of folks whose title is, planning zoning board members in things that are around, that involve planning and zoning.
So this is where I'm gonna defer to legal, because the case is the governing body is the party to the case, so I
Yes.
don't know if the planning board is covered to be able to go into executive.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be plenty of opportunities for the planning board to participate in these
Well, not
matters.
between now and June 30th. There won't be plenty
Yes.
of opportunities.
What Darlene spoke to as to, updates to the master plan, those are gonna be public hearings. Any kind of amendment to the master plan, there's gonna be involvement not only by this board, but also the public as well to offer any comments or suggestions. So there's gonna be plenty of opportunities for. the
Again,
board
prior
be
to
involved.
June 30,
Well, we have to have hearing before June 30th.
a hearing.
Under the statute,
Right, which is different from plenty of opportunities for.
Well, I mean, even beyond June 30th as well, like as Darlene stated. there-
The ordinances.
Right, the ordinances in which there will be like the inconsistency determinations. So, I defer to Darlene here, but I
So
mean,
Randy, when you were saying special meetings, are you envisioning special meetings of this board, or do you think?
It'll be special meetings of council
Of
and
council,
of this
okay.
board,
Okay.
both. And to be fair, we did have a affordable housing subcommittee of this board that produced a fairly detailed report, which is part of what this board and the subcommittee is working off of some of the information that came through that report that you were on and Paul was on and Maggie was on. So this was done before you were on the board. So we actually had quite an extensive analysis and report created by a subcommittee of this board to give guidance to the full board as well as the subcommittee and council members. So one of the things that we are faced with now, and Darlene and Ted can correct me if I'm wrong, is, and we knew this was coming, that the obligation that we had was not given to us until very late, and then the deadlines to solve that obligation come very quick on the heels. So when we're actually told what the obligation is. So it is in many ways, the state process that has really concertinaed this process. And in addition to that conversation, just, I don't think it has affected Frenchtown per se, but one of the other complications that has happened from the state level that Darlene shared with me maybe 2 months ago was the DEP put out new rules about endangered species, threatened and endangered species across the state, which changes what properties are developable and which properties are going to be protected with a where they're really clashing very badly with this. So it's so to your point though, there actually has been quite a lot of input from a subcommittee of this board, but it was before you were on the board,
Right.
into this process.
I understand.
So
and
this
agree.
has been a process going on for some
Right,
time.
but again, to your point, I'll stop repeatedly, redundantly beating the dead horse over and over again, but especially because of the unreasonable timelines and the quick things over the past few months, even more reason to get as much help and input as possible. And again, so I just ask when these things arise, as in what we're going to discuss later, that more participation is being, I think, let's speak for other people, but for myself, certainly, is offered and available, and we should seek more participation and inclusion in these things.
Thank you. I actually think we do pretty good on that, but thank you for your comments. I appreciate them, and I will take them to heart.
Wanted to volunteer something, I guess, on that note. So when we went through this before, we talked about this at the last meeting. I think it was Juliet and I that kind of authored that, what is affordable housing thing that was on the website? So I'm just volunteering, like, if you need someone to dust that off, if you feel like you want to. That, you don't have to tell me.
Right,
but,
we did discuss this. This
okay.
was, as we were, I think, adopting the last round.
Yeah.
Because there is with the community, there is a lot of confusion
Yeah.
about what affordable housing actually means. A lot of people are afraid of affordable housing because somehow they think that that's going to be a terrible thing that's going to be inflicted upon them. So
It's just an offer.
no, I
You
think
don't
if we
have to
move
take me
forward,
up
we
on
may
it.
want to
Okay.
dust that off.
I agree.
post that.
I think folks would be surprised when they saw some of the income levels, especially for your
exactly.
region of the state. It's quite high.
And you saw that at the last meeting, right, when a wonderful citizen volunteered to participate and contribute, but he said he didn't know the difference between low income and supported housing.
Yeah.
So I think NFAQ, or what exactly is it? What does it mean? What doesn't is really a terrific suggestion.
Yeah, if you can dig that out. Jean, if you,
Yeah, it's on the website.
I think it might still
I
be on
think
the
it's on
website.
the website. I'll look. Okay.
All right, so anything else on affordable housing for right now? We're plowing forward with it as quickly as we can, and we will share as much as we can as soon as we have things to share with the rest of the planning board, and we will have special meetings so that we can hash it out with more detail and try to hit all our we have to hit all our deadlines or we're going to be in deep trouble.
Yeah.
All right, so moving forward, everyone good? Moving on to the Aging in Place Committee update. I didn't know if Brad or Jean wanted to give that update.
Oh, thanks a lot.
All right,
So, so the borough is being awarded a $70,000 grant to go through a planning process. So that's great. And I'll take a minute to explain what's involved in that. But it's coming from the State Department of Human Services that sort of use 1970-ish kind of like contracting. So over the last week, Samantha has kindly led the way to make sure that our disclosure of not investing in Belarus and other places like that are all in place. So that was due yesterday. So thank you so much for doing that.
yes, in
So-
some ways, some of those addendums are fairly comical. I was very amused at the one that we're not invested in
Yeah,
Belarus.
I
I'm
know,
like,
right? And so
seriously.
I think it was an April 1st start date, although we
Yes.
don't have a contract.
Correct.
Right, okay. So, and it's a 13-month. It ends June of 26, right? Okay. So what this board's committee had kind of come up with the proposal is to create a planning board members, but then members of the public, to sort of operate over the course of the lifetime of the initiative. The next task is the AARP in New Jersey is very active on this topic of age friendly, and they've created what they call a network. And so the council, by receiving this award, would pass a resolution saying we're joining the network, which is a good thing. It's all like kind of technical assistance. The next thing is that we would do a community survey to hear from the community, from people, elders in the community, present company included. What are some of the challenges that they face, right? Is it housing? Is it affordability? Is it food? Is it transportation? Are they aware of the services offered by the county? Like, just to really understand what the challenges are. And that kind of community survey would also include some listening. So the idea is that, seniors might not, have interest in doing a survey, so maybe we'd hold a listening session, or I know the Fourth Street Church has Super Senior Day or something like that, so maybe we'd be there. And then we would also have someone who's qualified to do this, do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the demographics in town, because the challenge for a small town with federal census data is that it's hard to keep up, and this town has changed a lot since COVID and with some development. And so we didn't really explain the methodology for how we do that, but we'll figure that out, I suppose. And then we would also do some research on best practices for small towns like ours, and how do they make a place age-friendly. And then all that would come together with recommendations to the governing body in terms of actions that can be taken. And I think that's everything, as I recall. So it's very much a planning process leading to a set of actions. I think not just for the council, but potentially for the planning board in terms of land use issues, maybe even for organizations in, some of the faith-based organizations in town in terms of things they could be doing. So, so it's kind of a 14-month or so inclusive planning process.
We had, right, a group of us, right? And so what is the relationship with that group and the?
I think that group expires and everybody can re-up.
Yeah,
Right? That we talked about.
Right, so
last-
I think that group, as happens with it, that one sort of came down because we came up with this granting thing, and now we're looking at a council, community, planning board committee. One of the things that's always tricky, and I'm, council runs into this, planning board runs into us, if we have, well, two things. First of all, if you have, what was it, committee of the whole, if you have two committees that are too large, it's very difficult to move forward. But also, we can't have a large committee that's heavily skewed toward the planning board and just have a token member from the community, a token member from council. We need to have it balanced. So it's sort of reforming. Really, the ink is barely dry on the paperwork that just went in for this.
And we also talked about hiring, doing an RFP to bring in a
Right.
professional to help us manage and run the process, given there's many volunteers.
And
So
because of some of that
I come
technical
back to
work.
my theme about participation. I had sent something to our group, Randy and Brad, a couple months ago when this group was first thing about, getting started. The response was, well, let's wait for the grant, which is somewhat understandable. On the other hand, there's a lot of things we can do, should do, that don't require money or grant. In terms of RFPs, I also have, and I'm sure, and this gets to the theme of participation, input, inclusion. I have close colleagues, for example, at the Hartford Foundation, who runs their aging thing. They'd be happy to volunteer, right? It's like, look, before we go have, council's gonna do this, let's see what resources we already have available to us. When people volunteer or have, we talked about changing demographics in Frenchtown. There's new people, there's old people, there's lots of connections, there's lots of resources already available here. 14 months, of planning is a lot of planning. And that means, 2 years before anything. Well, I mean, let's figure out ways. There are a lot of things we can do, right? Quick wins along the way while we're doing some long-term big plan. Let's move, right? Let's say, well, we'll first get a committee and then we'll get some input and then we'll send an RFP and then we'll do this and then we'll go for it. It's like, our aging people won't be around anymore. And not to.
Well, I think the other thing that I didn't mention is, in addition to the AARP network, the state is providing resources to the Rutgers Planning School, which is going to be providing technical assistance. So I think on that point, Marty, the idea for the grant is, okay, and the grant was very cookie cutter. Like, I mean, there was, it was like, okay, we want to see applications that are going to do X, Y, and Z. So we said, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So I think the opportunity is to then say, okay, so this is what we've got on our plate. One of our first things is, well, getting a consultant who can do some of the technical work, but doing some listening, right? Okay, so, and doing a community survey, right? There's ways to do community surveys and there's ways not to do community surveys. So we're gonna have some technical resources available to help us do that. So that's gonna be, I'd say, kind of like our spring effort is
Right.
listening, right?
Yeah, and I agree, and this is not to, for self-aggrandizing, it's just one example, there's, 1,400 people in Frenchtown. I designed a strategic planning, aging in place, community thing in the late 1990s, early 2000s for a continuing care retirement community. I have 15 years of experience in home health, hospice, and community aging in place things. I know because I've had these conversations, there are many folks in Frenchtown who have a lot more experience in the space than I do. Let's make sure, I mean, they're right here.
Right.
And I'm concerned that since we started this or initially appointed this group, I don't know, several months ago, that, we could have been doing these things already.
Well, my sense was coming from that committee was that there is this grant available and my impression was that the committee's push forward was we should get this grant going. Jean discovered there was money going. So that is, which
And it was
is a real bonus.
But-
And it was
yeah.
a bonus and a bonus to the borough.
Yeah, it's
And I
not
do
an,
think that
it's not
there-
an or thing, it's an and thing. I mean, I made the response to my suggestion, let's start doing this was, let's wait until the grant comes through before we start. And I'm saying, we don't have to wait.
It sounds like you're asking, what can you do right now?
Mhm.
And it sounds like we just need to have figure out
Set up a committee.
what the next steps are, and
Yeah.
there will be a committee, and even if. I mean, I'm interested, but even if I'm not on the committee, I can still say I'd love to help with the survey, that's
Yeah, no, that's
exciting.
And I think-
Let me
just
know
winning
how
this
I
week.
can.
Yeah.
But I also
So-
think, there's some thought that needs to go into the committee, right? Because we wanted to represent the people that we're attempting to provide support to.
That would be a good idea.
And that's not an
But
easy thing to
The
do.
people on the committee don't have to be the only people who do the work of,
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
so if we have experience. Having said, hey, committee folks, whoever that ends up being, we would like to help,
Right.
hopefully they'll. Loop us in and we'll be able to help.
Perfect.
Jean, this AARP network, will it give us access? I'm coming in on my planning hat. Will it give us access to this is from across the US in like zoning and
Yeah, it's part of their national
okay,
8 domains of livability thing.
I looked those up.
Yeah, so the answer is, that's what it's exactly supposed to do.
okay. Because I think that would be great if
Yeah,
especially if they could help us navigate to places similar to
Correct.
Frenchtown. And show us what have they done and how has that worked? Because
Yeah.
and to me, this topic it weaves into so many other topics. It's probably
Yeah.
in these master plan documents that Randy gave us. I know it came up in affordable housing.
right,
So
Right.
to me, there's a lot of things that are overlapping
right.
that we've been talking about.
Right, and then the other technical systems from Rutgers is supposed to say, we're like, we want to figure out how to better look at our demographics, and they're like, okay, we can help you figure out how to do that, or we want to do a community survey, They're like, okay, we can look at your draft and help you do that, so the idea is that and there'll be meetings of the grantees. We don't know how many grantees were awarded, but the idea is that then is this community of practice within the state.
And I think, to Martin's point, not at your level of expertise, but I know several people that are sitting here on this board that have different levels of experience with elder care in communities and some of the problems with elder care. Jean and I actually had a really good conversation. I don't know, when was that? Yesterday, today? I don't know. Talking about, some of the barriers to helping the elderly, not so much when they're already in an assisted living facility or in an elder care facility, but when they're still living independently because of the reticence to use outside agency, reticence to let anyone in to know that they're having trouble dealing with things, reticence to use food assistance, reticence to use what have you, because they don't want anyone to know that they're having trouble
Sure.
with food, they're having trouble getting around their house, they're afraid of having some agency come in and
Right.
remove
Moving
them. So, there's a lot of and as well as the issues of dementia in the community,
Mhm.
where, an individual may need help, but is never going to say they need help because
Giving
they're
up their
not even
driver's
sure.
license, right?
They're not even sure
Yeah.
how to get to their bathroom.
Right.
So, it's, trying to figure out, so reaching out to both the elderly in the community, but also some of their caregivers in the community to try to figure out how to, so
Exactly.
even just something as simple as surveying the community appropriately becomes complicated. So using, the Rutgers resources, using the AARP resources, using whatever resources we have, as well as a professional has experience in this, can really aid us, because I think every different elder care situation or living in place, but it's all different.
Absolutely.
Right up to the 100-year-olds that are still.
And to, to Darlene and Jean's points, right? And one of my favorite cliches, I guess, is it's often a lot easier to find out the answer than to figure out the answer. And so what other towns have done, what's been successful, what hasn't
Yes.
worked, what programs have been out there that, people have done this before. And we can learn a lot without having to repeat mistakes or make errors that, we don't have to do this on our own. So we don't have to learn from our own mistakes.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm getting ahead of anyone to say what I'm about to say, which is that I can appreciate that, whatever this is gonna be, 14 months or something, may feel like a elongated planning process, and it's like, oh, planning, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure that what Darlene's going through now with affordable housing in terms of an insane planning process in a matter of 3 months is not what planning normally is. It's usually
It's not what planning should be.
it's not what planning should be, and the biggest part of this is listening, right? Like, so that we are not jumping to conclusions about what the problem is, right? But with that said, is as we're starting to listen, if we're seeing real problems in the community, this doesn't mean that we can't come to the planning board or come to the mayor, come to the council and say, we're hearing this as like a compelling and urgent need. We don't need to wait till the end of the 14 months.
Yeah.
So that's, I think
Yeah.
something that we can.
And an example that would be, and this is something that the mayor and I have talked about several times, because this is something that has come up before the planning board before, and one of my pet peeves with aging in place is we need to look at some sort of a carve out, so that if someone needs a medically necessary ramp or a medically necessary generator, they don't have to jump through
Right.
all kinds of flaming hoops and get a bunch of, that we have some sort of carve out that allows that. And we can start moving forward on things like that, because we've already listened on that, because we've had people come before us with
Right.
that problem repeatedly over the years. So that's something we can obviously move forward on
Let's go.
before that is done.
Exactly.
Um,
The other piece about how all the parts fit together, quoted Janis Joplin, who said it's all the same expletive deleted day. Elderly living in place, different sorts of problems. We have aging infrastructure in Frenchtown, right? A lot of 1880s homes or earlier, insulation. I just think about an old person paying utility bills and how much money $500 worth of caulk could save in Frenchtown, right? I mean, so all the different parts come together. It's not just one piece. And so sustainability is related to, has an impact on aging in place or being able to stay in place. So yeah, all of this stuff fits together, and things like ramps and carve outs for expedited, let's go.
And hopefully on stuff like that, I mean, being part of this network, we can say to ARP, do you have examples of little tiny towns that did things like ramps and, carve out?
Yeah. What does that, so we don't have to create, while Darlene's trying to figure out affordable
Right.
housing, we don't have to also write that. We
Right.
can actually
Yeah.
borrow some, you're welcome. Borrow some wording, find where that already exists. All right, aging in place.
Yeah.
We're good on aging in place. Moving forward then to the cross acceptance. This is another state thing with a short deadline that was put on us. We discussed this last month. So there's a template that was put out. This is the Darlene, I'm just gonna have you talk about it. what the cross-acceptance process is and why we're here and why this document looks the way it does after, John worked on it some and then it said, Darlene, please help me, and asked you to, take care of that.
So this is Hunterdon County's template. So
Okay, one second, and everybody, if you,
Oh, can
I
I
did
just-
send out, the ones this afternoon that I made some edits on.
Oh, this is the county.
This is the county template. Oh, there's
it's
still
not
copies here someplace.
style words.
So if,
No.
so if anybody needs a copy, but I sent those out this afternoon because that's when I finally managed to get to it. Sorry. I only had the template 2 days ago or something.
It's
Go ahead.
okay. Yes, we're. So the state plan is in process of being adopted. As part of the state plan process, they have what they call cross acceptance, where towns are asked to look at their master plan documents and compare them against the draft state plan.
And this happens how often?
Well, it hasn't happened for quite some time.
Yes.
It's sort of like they forgot about their master plan re-exam for 24 years.
Yes, thank you. So this is
so-
the quarter quell.
And they're in a rush to get it done. They want to have it adopted by the end of this year. So it's just like affordable housing. It's on an expedited timeline, which I don't think is the wisest thing, because if we waited this long, what's a few more months to actually get it right? Be that as it may, each county is then the negotiating entity unless you're in one of the planning regions, Highlands, Meadowlands. So Hunterdon County is our negotiating entity because the state does not want to deal with 565 towns. So instead, they will deal with the 20-some counties. So, counties have put out different types of cross acceptance templates. This is the one that Hunterdon County has put out. So if you perhaps see another county's template, it could have completely different questions. I don't know why, but that's just the way this process is unraveling. Hunterdon County has said that if we do not have comments into them by the 31st, if they're coming of this month, if they're coming shortly thereafter, just let them know and they'll be fine. But they want the comments attached to a resolution from the governing body. That way they know that these are the borough's comments and not Bob, who lives on First Avenue's comments. These are actually the official borough comments. And so we're in a little bit of a crunch because governing body meets next Wednesday.
We do, yeah.
So this is why we're discussing it tonight.
We may have a special meeting middle of the month, potentially.
But I'm
Okay.
sure Sam can work her magic and put these on the council agenda if we figure this out tonight.
Okay.
No, but that's important for us, right, to
You feel
know,
rushed.
right?
We may
Because,
have a special meeting because of the, we're hoping to be in a position to introduce the budget. And
Okay.
also, we'll see how things go. We're trying to get approval from DOT to move forward on going out to bid on the Wardsheet project.
Okay.
Sure.
I don't think the county would be upset with us if it was something around April 15th. Compared to April 3rd. But if we don't submit any comments, then the assumption is, and it's not just the Hunterdon County assumption, it's every county's assumption, that you are perfectly fine with everything that's in the document. Which I think is a terrible assumption. So in this document, you will see the edits that we made in green. At first I started with red and I thought, God, I don't know. Yeah, that's not good. So I wanted them to jump off the page. So where there are blanks, that just means there isn't an answer. It's not that you forgot about it. It's just, we don't necessarily have all the documents that they list. So some of these questions I think are almost reversed because they talk about how we have incorporated policies and concepts in the state plan. The state plan was just issued in draft format in December. So unless we had been acting with warp speed, there's no way we would have already started amending our master plan documents. Plus, I would argue that it's premature because the way the state plan process works is they have to hold a public hearing in every county plus the 3 planning regions. That process is wrapping up in April. They are accepting any one of you can submit comments on the state plan as a resident. I would encourage you to do so. And so that is happening simultaneously. Then they're reviewing these carts, the negotiating entity will review them with the state. At that point in time, the state will then make edits to the draft plan. So I think it would be premature for any town to start amending their master plan documents because the goals and the policies could be refined over the course of the year. So that's why I have my answer to number 2 at the bottom of the page, which we'll add page numbers to these. That would be wise. That's why I wrote the answer to number 2 the way I did. At the top of page 2, number 3, I tried to remain non-committal about changing our master plan documents because once again, I don't know what these goals are going to say at the end of the year. Number 4, this was actually one of the positive items. So the state is divided into different planning areas. Planning area 1 is the highest and densest planning area that reflects urban areas, dense suburban areas. You have been designated planning area 5. That's environmentally sensitive planning area. And I wholeheartedly agree with that because of all the environmental features in the borough. So that one I think is perfectly fine. We can, as part of this process, ask to have our planning area changed. Some of my towns we are. I have 100-acre swamp that's classified as planning area 1. We think that was a mistake. And so you can, as part of this process, ask for mapping changes. Good news, I don't think you need any. Then any of this.
I did not.
Oh,
I
okay.
did not. I didn't, the only thing I edited was the yellow highlight bits on the last page, so.
Oh, okay.
So,
So, these comments you see here actually are comments that I have written, for some of my other towns that are just generic comments that apply across similarly sized towns. And the first one, and page 23, is the page in the state plan. They did not number the goals or the policies, which is a little frustrating.
nice.
And so it's hard to refer to them other than I have is a page number. And so that the state plan seeks to build housing, and there are multiple policies about housing. I mean, all types of different housing, but it is blind to utility limits. And in Frenchtown, you have your own sewer treatment plant. You do not have interconnections for water. So once we get to the sewer treatment plant's capacity and New Jersey American.
New Jersey American.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Randy's got their advertisement.
Just a water bottle.
Once we reach those two utilities capacities, while we might want to add housing, we're going to be stuck. And so in my mind, the state plan needs to recognize that places like Frenchtown do not have an interconnect ability, as if I were sitting maybe in Morris County where I've got 3 different options for interconnections. And so utilities are not as much of a concern. So I think there needs to be some refinement in the state plan to recognize that there's just not finite water and sewer to build willy-nilly. I have put in here some concerns about some of the comments on floodplain regulations, because I do worry because a lot of Frenchtown is within the flood hazard area. It's unclear if the state plan is discouraging new construction in flood hazard areas. That section is the way it's written, it's just not clear if they're referring to new construction, existing home renovations, or what it is. So I've asked for some clarification, because I do think it would be wise to discourage, if not prohibit, multifamily development in floodplain regions.
Multifamily development, but not single family development? What's the difference?
The number of people, I mean, I'm not a state policymaker. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd not be building anything in a flood
Right, that's
hazard
why I mean,
area.
why the distinction between
Well,
multi versus single family. home?
DEP does distinguish it now. They won't, if you don't have a high and dry access in a flood hazard area, you cannot build multifamily housing.
Okay, but we're
Um,
suggesting changes and modifications.
We are.
right? So,
Yes. And asking for clarification. And then the last one at the bottom of page 3, right above item number 2, it's page 83 of the document. There's a comment in here that concerned me that says local governments lack resources to handle planning related procedures.
you wonder why you would object? Only kidding.
Right. I'm not sure your comment is actually toned down. I have some towns that have very strong comments about that. Because it just appears like that might have been a first draft comment that someone forgot to take out.
I thought your version of our exception was very well stated and very clear without being unnecessarily obnoxious. Although obnoxious would have been called for. Yeah,
I have one council president who really wants me to,
strengthen that.
yes.
Well, I wouldn't argue with you necessarily, but I thought this was good.
Yeah. So those are the comments. I tried to keep them pretty focused. And I do think that if this part goes in this shape or fashion, we should pull out these comments and submit them on the state plan website, separate and apart, because I don't know how the county negotiating entity is going to handle that. And so I want to make sure if we have comments, we want to make sure they get to the state and not get lost in however many towns the county is coordinating.
Well, are you asking us to vote on?
No,
this?
we don't.
No?
I don't think we
I
do.
don't think we do, but I wanted to actually talk about the part that I edited here at the end.
Yes.
As well. So, Darlene had a section here, which, she left it open, areas with flooding concern include ... I filled in River Road, Railroad Ave, and the area in and around Route 29 between the Nishosequit Creek and the Little Nishosequit Creek, which always floods. Those are our 3 main flood areas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but also over,
What I missed.
anywhere that's by the Nishosequit goes out to the river, that whole 29 corridor, if the river is too high.
Well, it's, but, so it's the area in between the Little and the Big Nishosequit, yeah?
The bridge always floods.
Yeah, lower, by the bridge it
Floods
floods.
in old house.
Yeah,
Well, that's this,
cemetery.
yeah, that's what I was trying to call out, is the area in and around 29 between the Nishosequit and the Little, because that's where your old house was.
Yeah.
But
So,
should I state that more broadly?
Oh, so this is what, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the first gray highlight here, under 5, sorry. Because
Maybe throw in their front and lot streets. Because that whole area goes under it, the creek
Okay.
can't let out, it backs up there, makes its way over to our yard,
yeah, okay,
post office.
yeah, I'll expand that a bit. And the other thing that which,
Wait, on this one?
yeah,
Would you want to add, I'm not married to this comment, but would it make sense to add the slope from, is that part of the Thompson tract?
Which,
Well, in terms of the property that's been acquired, so I mean, maybe we would argue that that's already protected, so we don't need to worry about it, right? New Jersey Conservation Foundation.
yeah, just because the steep slope there coming off the Thompson track.
Right, because the question is, what are areas that should be protected and.
Areas, so separate from that, so I was
I
filling in
guess.
areas with flooding concern,
I was just adding something other than flood.
right, so add in steep slope. Especially. We know, what do we call the Thompson track now, other than the
Yeah,
Thompson
what do-
track?
I don't know, we'd have a name to
Maybe you could sell naming rights.
Protected, oh God, along Creek Road,
Yeah,
Milford Road.
Yes.
and other steep slopes.
Other cemetery.
Yeah.
Dale Cliff,
Yeah.
yep, all that, I'll add in all that. Good point about the steep slopes.
And then Randy, my other question on that one was, remember a couple of years ago, I think it was even before I was on the planning board. And the woman, I think her last name was Krasner.
Yes. Yeah, we have the environmental, we have the,
Oh, she did environmental research.
we've got a whole, yeah, we
So is
Yeah.
there should we reference that? I mean, she did a great job. Because that's adopted as part of the master
Yep.
plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, it was, Debbie Kratzer's report.
Debbie, okay.
Wait, you adopted some?
An environmental resource inventory.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I never received a copy of that. The
Yeah.
latest one I have is from 1994, which would change.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, and actually, it's a natural resource, and it's not an environmental one. It
that's fine.
doesn't have the polluting
Right.
stuff.
So
It's
that
just-
would actually change on the page one, Randy. Because the
Sorry,
only
what's
one
that?
I have
In
is from
terms of plans.
1994. And I did find that shocking, but
Oh,
Betsy
goodness.
was good about
Yep,
giving me.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was adopted several years back.
Okay, I'll fix that.
Part of this discussion, and again, this is the same sort of theme, and I appreciate Darlene and Randy and John's work on this, but the rest of us received this, minutes before the meeting, and so there's a lot here. And again, I'm not sure why this wasn't shared more broadly for input and commentary.
Because, well, it was done on Tuesday.
All right, well, today-
And I edited it today.
well, but you could have gotten more.
But I
help,
was,
is what I'm saying. You didn't have to do it all by yourself. There's
Yeah,
people
it
here
was just
who can help.
only so many hours in the day, Martin. I was trying to afford as quickly as I could on it, and getting it, my goal was to get it, to take a look at it and get it out to everyone as soon as I got it, and I delayed 24 hours, and I do apologize for that. Moving down to number 8, because it doesn't look like we're gonna vote on this tonight. We might be able to vote to move forward on it, and we can run it past folks. But if we go down to 8, so we need to pick our top 3 goals. So what I did very quickly, and I'm not married to these at all. So I took this incredibly ugly little document from when we did our master plan reexamination board priorities. So the reexamination was 2021. We did the priorities in 22. And I looked over the list of priorities, and then I looked at these goals. And it seemed to me that our top goals were the 3 that I highlighted. So roughly speaking, parking and circulation, housing, and land use to balance environmental and topographical factors with the needs of all segments of the community. These are all our goals.
Yes.
So trying to pick the top 3 goals out of our top goals is rude. But I tried to take, I tried to take what we've already done, work that the board has already done together to create priorities and translate it into just 3 of these.
I think that makes sense. There's a lot of time that we put into that.
Yeah, we did put a lot of time. This was months of
Yeah.
hashing, and then the very colorful highlighting has to do with what we've managed to get done so far. But that was where I grabbed these goals from. I didn't just flip a coin.
3 is so arbitrary.
And 3 is incredibly arbitrary. Because quite frankly, leaving off energy and clean air and conservation.
Yeah, the
Rankles my
conservation one
spears,
is the
but-
one, could we put a semicolon after the housing one? And add the conservation one, do the housing thing while we're striving to preserve the natural, scenic and historic.
Exactly. It's,
I don't think you're gonna get your hand slapped if we submit more than 3.
Oh, good. Why don't we submit them all? I mean, what would we take off the list?
Right.
yeah, but this was,
Right?
yeah. So that was where I went with that.
Do you want other comments now?
Sure, what else you got?
Okay, so,
While everybody's staring at that.
okay.
What else you got?
So, so the draft state plan is receiving some criticism. for,
Shocker.
under section 2, number 1,
Yeah.
your page 23, that it should, encourage municipalities to do all these things, but that it also needs to include language to adopt land use patterns that promote clean energy. And so since like walkability, bikeability, but also EV charging stations, microgrids, community-based energy planning, all those kinds of things. And so since we had energy in our goals, I wondered whether you'd want to add that into the comments. So I think it could be like that in terms of your comments, Darlene, strategy to revise to encourage blah, 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 limit housing to existing utility constraints and encourages the adoption of clean energy, or something like that.
I think that's really good. Again, it's. the
That's a good
end
idea.
thing, Right?
Okay, and so then my other comment was on your page 3, the item number about flooding. I kind of feel like the 100-year flood zone is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
And that maybe the language should be just consistency with state and federal flood
Oh,
regulations.
you're at the top of the page. Jean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right. The 100-year zone is not.
Yeah, except for the flood-year zone is still what's on their maps.
Yeah.
Well, but FEMA is gonna be gone, right? So the fact is that this state has an inland flood rule that governs land use would be,
Thank you for
Right.
pointing out the obvious.
And then, Jean, what about those rules?
so
Those
the inland
acronyms?
flood rooms were adopted, the
Right.
coastal rules are still proposed, so
Right,
they're not
okay.
adopted yet. So I guess my thought, and I
So
can,
Frenchtown has several areas.
Can you wordsmith something?
Yeah, I
Jean?
can
Yeah, wordsmith something,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but
Are we sending
mostly-
you all, we're sending you all these edits, I think? Or are we sending them to me? Who are we sending the edits to?
Depends on what
Maybe,
day of
yeah.
the week it is.
I know.
If it's the rest of this week, please don't send them to me. I have 3
Maybe
meetings.
Okay, send them to me.
Yeah,
Although I'm gonna be going to Pittsburgh. I'm leaving Friday for Pittsburgh. I'll be gone all
I'll give them
weekend.
to them.
Again,
John?
people want to volunteer,
send them
but
to
can we, other people?
Sure, we're sending them to
participate?
John Demblicker, because he started this process.
And I was gonna do something vague, like just consistent
Yep,
with
yep.
state rules. or
I
something.
would just recommend any communications that are between board members should go through the secretary
Okay.
first. And then the secretary can forward them to all.
So we can
board
do like a
members.
track changes and send it to Samantha.
Okay,
Also, for legal reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
okay.
Maybe I'll-
You don't want a
maybe
violation of the Open Public.
Send
Meetings
all
Act.
the
Right,
changes
right.
to Samantha, she compiles them and then sends them out for one
Yeah.
editing session versus multiple
Mhm.
track changes thrown around.
Yeah.
You gonna do that, Sam?
Should be able to
Okay.
conduct it.
And then my last comment, Darlene, was on the thing about regional planning, was, I don't know if this is making it softer or making it harder, but
Page 83.
page 3 at the bottom there, where you start with the Frenchtown takes exception to the statement. I think there's value in making the point that we don't disagree that regional planning has value added.
Mhm.
What the problem is that the state has provided absolutely no incentives through the state plan or any other mechanism to support
Mhm.
regional
Yeah.
Yeah,
coordination.
yeah,
So I would add a statement like that.
I think that's
sure.
yes.
Okay. All right, so that was.
And instead of that's just coming out and throwing municipal planning under the
Yeah.
bus, yes.
Right. We'd like to keep municipal planning, but we encourage regional
Right.
planning.
And
because
need to
it does
provide
make
us incentives
sense.
to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. important.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so I think what we're gonna do then.
Charlie, are you working with Kate Fullerton on this?
I don't know, if Kate's, I don't remember if Kate was taking the lead or someone else from the county. From the plan department.
Right, I've been working with Kate on, it. So she wants these back. What I was gonna say is.
Theoretically, they said the 31st, but they said if you weren't going to have it, because they want.
First of.
This month.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. Or why don't you ask her if you asked Kate,
Mhm.
if you could send it after the next planning board meeting, that would give folks enough time. Probably to make their comments and edits.
Well, here's the problem. They want them attached to a resolution from governing body. So that puts us out.
Yeah, so
I
we,
mean, I will ask her.
so we
I'll
have,
just ask
I
her.
don't know if she's gonna give us the runway for that.
yeah, I mean, the notes that Austin took
Mhm.
suggested that that is not, from the county, I mean, that's not gonna work. So what I think we need to do is throw this.
You'd almost have to have a special meeting.
I think we need to throw this together. And get it to council in time. You're saying you're gonna have a meeting.
Most likely, yeah.
Mid-April.
Okay,
Mid-April.
but I need to ask two questions. Sam, can you cobble this all together just from what you have heard tonight, or do you need us to send you written notes?
I think I can give it a go.
Okay,
But Jean was gonna provide that.
I
one.
can
You're
give
gonna
you mine.
provide
Yeah, and I'll
something.
just do it in track changes, so it's easy
Okay.
to follow.
and two, someone has got to reach out to the state and let them know that they're not gonna have them by the 31st and give them our estimated date. County, sorry, misstated, misspoke. I want to put state in that sentence again. We need to reach out to the county and let them know when we're estimating to get this to
I'll
them.
talk to Kate tomorrow.
Okay, you'll take
Yeah, I'll
care of that?
care.
Okay, very good. Sam, if there's any comments that you're missing, feel free to give me a buzz. So. I think we're good on this. At this point, we're gonna be circulating it. Sam's gonna put everything together, then she will circulate it to the entire planning board. And again, sorry for the frantic pace of this, but you know, when we are given frantic deadlines, frantic paces happen. So, thank you very much for that. Is there anything else on? I'll say it on the crazy cross acceptance process. Are we good? Okay. Moving on then to vouchers.
I'll motion for approval of payment of vouchers.
Thank you. I had them here recently. I know I did. There they are. Are there, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jean. Are there any further comments or questions on the vouchers? If not, could I have a vote, please?
Property,
Yes,
Herb,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes,
Meyer.
Yes.
Redding,
Yes.
Tomco,
Yes.
Branson,
yes.
Denblinger.
yes.
Eckel.
Yes. Moving on to correspondence, council representative report and other related items. Mayor, John, what have we got?
well, I'll go first. Last council meeting, there was a large group of people attended and spoke out about their concerns regarding pedestrian safety in town, traffic safety. The council president, spoke, in detail about the work that council and the traffic and safety subcommittee, which has been formed, have already done. And have in process right now. So, the mayor has asked our borough engineer to look at, in a sort of preliminary way, what might be done at the intersection of Route 12 and Race Street in particular, where there was a recent, accident. And they're gonna report at the council meeting next week on what they found. And then, the mayor's put out a couple of, I thought, good, thorough, updates to the community via email that people have seen. And we're having a meeting in April, a special meeting to talk about infrastructure. And it'll include the traffic issues. Do you know the date off the top of your head?
At the upcoming meeting, Colliers Engineering is
That's
supposed to
this
give us a proposal
next week,
from an
okay.
outside traffic safety expert for the cost structure, what it would look like to move forward. And that's all they deal with they deal with traffic patterns, traffic safety. It's an outside firm that would give us an analysis of that.
Of that
of
intersection
that
specifically,
intersection.
okay,
It's under the county jurisdiction, but we're
yeah,
trying to work in partnership with the county
Yeah.
from that intersection down to Kingwood Avenue.
yeah. But weren't we having a meeting later in April to talk about infrastructure projects in the borough in
I think
general?
we saw, another town hall sort of
I'm
thing.
doing town hall on April 26th, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the other thing. So I'm sure that the town hall on April 26th, not specifically about pedestrian or safety or traffic, but I'm sure there are infrastructure projects that the mayor discussed in his email that, will certainly be part of that.
Are there things that the people who attended the council meeting felt wasn't happening with regard to pedestrian safety?
I think two things. What I took away was two things. Mainly, people wanted the opportunity to provide more input into the process. There was a lot of concern, or one person in particular expressed concern about the work of a subcommittee, and the impression they had was, well, this is somehow being done in a sort of secretive way. And it was explained that no, the subcommittee, it complies with the law because there's no quorum present, and they're not required to have an open meeting or publish minutes and things like that. And the reason that that's done is for efficiency. Just like the Affordable Housing Committee, et cetera. I think part of the challenge that we face as council is, trying to address that concern about people. They want to show, they want to participate, they want to have input. So we're going to try to, enable that.
This is meant in a total, I was at that meeting and I have spoken to several of those people following the meeting and had follow-up discussions as well. And I think you're spot on. I think the issue is that people feel that they're not, again, input, participation, being listened to is the main complaint that those people have. And even on the sunshine ruling, there was some pushback, and I didn't go to law school and I'm not a lawyer, but on whether the open whether or not it is actually a requirement because there's quorum issues, but participation, who's on that committee may require some things. So there was some dispute back and
Well, I
forth
can
about
give a
that.
quick overview of the committee, because this has come up, and the one gentleman that was there.
Right.
We've given him all kinds of information, more than most people in the borough. But the committee consists of the school board president, the school board principal, one member of the citizen Safe Streets Committee that we thought was also participating, talking with their group, but maybe not. The police director, myself, the council president, public safety director, and then 3 community members appointed at large. So everything that's been done at that committee has been put out publicly at the meetings, has been sent out by email. And most of the things that have been done have come as suggestions from that committee, whether it's the acquisition of the traffic safety beacons, the enhancements downtown, the soon-to-be enhancements to Kingwood Avenue. So everything that's happened has been things that have come from the committee and we discussed publicly. So, the idea that there's this secret committee or that people aren't being included, I mean, a lot of these ideas were actually citizen ideas that have come to fruition. So I think we're really happy about that. And that's kind of helped guide us on our grant process too, as we've been trying to pursue grants.
And this goes some of my other parts of my background. I used to be a basketball referee, and part of my 15 years in the Big Four was being sent in for things that had gone, really badly. And so I enjoy that. That's right. But anyway, my point is, those two different things can be true, right? You could have done, all the things you should do and all that kind of stuff, and people can still, that doesn't mean, so there's a marketing communications maxim that says just when you're getting tired of saying things or when people are first starting to hear it. And so the fact that there is that disconnect, and it's not, I don't think it's a question of any malintent or people trying to keep things secret or exclude, but that doesn't mean that there isn't also some sort of problem. Right. And it's not a question of whose fault is it, but why do people feel that way when, there's so much going on to make it not that way?
I think there's certain things that we just can't accomplish, right? So like one of the things was we want every road in Frenchtown to be 25 miles an hour. So we had a traffic safety study done. The county engineer did that independently. They did traffic trackers, they did vehicle counts and did speed analysis. What came out of that is Frenchtown, your speed limits are too low. Which is not. So obviously we didn't want to take it as an engineer. So sometimes it's like, be careful what you ask for. And so we've had challenges like that. And I think Councilor Doherty remembers that. We're like, well, that's the worst news we could have. So we've been trying to do what we can within the confines of our, the other challenge is certain roads just don't belong to us. So as we're trying to negotiate these changes, which I think will be for the good, we have to get county engineering sign off.
Right.
You know, there's things that our residents would love to have happen, we just simply can't deliver, whether it's speed humps in the middle of county roads, things of that nature, but we're trying to make slow and steady progress. And I'm hopeful that having an outside traffic safety expert will serve as a neutral third party that
Yeah.
can say,
Yeah,
hey, Frenchtown has raised these concerns. We've studied them now, and we think there's some validity to these things, and these might make sense for implementation.
I think it's actually a really great bonus to have an outside
Mhm.
engineer come in and do that. And the cemetery, actually, the aging, uh, in place
Yeah.
situation, you know, having somebody come in from the
Absolutely.
outside, because, you know, we all have our view and how we see things, you know, and having an outside agency, or outside individual come in who specializes, and I think is brilliant to do
I
that.
think that helps
It
us.
is.
So we're excited what's gonna happen at Kingwood Avenue. That's a good first start. And then if this can build some momentum, we'll see what we can do at that intersection and just keep going.
It is also the communication aspect, I feel, because I've been watching these meetings since before I was on this board. And actually I think the meeting where you guys talked about the traffic study that was done, I watched with a friend who was visiting. And she and I just sat there going like, oh man, the communication here is really falling down, like what the report is saying is not being heard correctly by the people who are upset about things, and the way that they are bringing issues to the table is not going to do them any favors. And I don't know that I have a solution, but I do often, when people in town are talking about the traffic issues, I do often find myself saying, well, we don't control the county roads.
Yeah.
Like, it's just something that,
Yeah.
you know, has been said in this meeting, but that doesn't mean that anyone heard it.
Yeah,
So I do think I'm interested in ways that we can improve communicating this stuff out to folks. I know the minutes go out, and Brenda's minutes were very dense, and I don't think anyone was ever gonna read them. I think we have, I mean, obviously we had to, and I'm sure there are people in town who do, but the vast majority of people are just not gonna read anything like that. I think Sam's minutes are great. They're also very brief. I wonder if there's something in between. And potentially I'm volunteering to try and put something like that together. I know I volunteered for something else.
I think that's partly why a couple years ago, we did the little one pager on what is affordable housing.
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Because we saw a lot of
Yeah.
confusion.
Because, and I think maybe that's, you know, maybe that's the answers when we see problems
Hmm.
that come up repeatedly. It's just like, you know, and I'm not on the traffic committee at all. But you know, here's some of the things we can do, here's some of the things we can't do, here's why we can't do things about, you know, I live on a county road, you know, you know, because you're right, there's certain things that, because it doesn't make sense to people. They're like, well, it's a road that's in the borough. What do you mean it's not a borough road? Just like, well, it's not. So maybe doing a one-page blurb similar to the, what is affordable housing?
The ability to, I don't know how good this analogy is, but Southwest Airlines, Herb Kelleher, who founded the thing, used to, decided that it'd be really good if everybody in the company knew what was going on. He sent out a version of the financial statement, right, of a, you know, huge multi-billion-dollar organization to every janitors, maintenance workers, everybody, and actually in a way that spoke and made sense to people, and got millions and millions and millions of dollars in cost savings from people who looked at pieces and said, hey, I have an idea. Hey, I have an idea. Again, that input, the participation, and I think that's you know, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Just because we're saying it doesn't mean they're hearing it. What language do we need to speak? How does it
Yeah.
need to be put? Who do we need in the tent? All those sorts of things make a big difference.
Well, and I think we need to also understand that there's always going to be certain individuals
Of course,
that, you know, it doesn't matter how you try to
absolutely.
transfer that information to them.
Well,
It
some
will-
people
will
don't
never
want to
get there.
hear, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, of course.
You know,
Yeah.
One last thing is, I think nowadays, we also need to be thoughtful about the platforms that we put it out on.
Yes.
because
Not
you
Signal?
can-
Signal, will you
Yeah.
signal?
I'm not trying to get into any of that, I just mean, you know, we can put it on Facebook, but it disappears down the feed, we can put it on the website, but people apparently don't look at websites anymore,
No,
Aside
actually, right
from
about that. Yeah.
Facebook, and so
Giant billboard.
So periodically, we need
So, I
to
mean,
mail
we're trying-
everything out to
I
people.
mean, I don't know, I'm interested in being a part of that
Yeah,
conversation. and
so we've
supporting
tried
it.
now, obviously we broadcast our meetings, is trying to get more
Yep.
participation. I'm doing the town halls now, I get more people at that than I do.
Yeah,
at
town
council
halls I
meeting.
think are great.
Yeah, I think that provides an opportunity for people to give feedback. We'll try and do those every other month or so.
I've been hearing really good stuff about
Yeah,
that.
people really enjoyed it. Actually, we hear stuff that we wouldn't otherwise hear, and
You know,
you get a nice diversity of town.
I seem to leave town every time you're having one, so it's
Yeah.
fine,
no,
but
we-
you know,
it's
it's.
nice, like, we talked to them, but we're doing those
Maybe
again.
plans.
I don't even know how to find out.
And we have the Frenchtown Facebook page that we established. for
The official one.
organizations, But that still doesn't seem to get the draw that the unofficial page gets. There's just no sense even trying on that
It
page.
has to be a
Yeah.
multimodal thing.
Yeah.
but-
Well, it does have to be multimodal because there's certain people that will not, that are never gonna go in all those
I was
places.
so-
And I wasn't joking about billboards.
That really
Right.
stinks. So, like, we used to have the Huntington Democrat, the Delaware Valley News.
Right.
Yes.
Local
We have
media.
No print media left anymore. That's a challenge
They
too.
used to have.
So billboards, I'm not kidding, right?
Yeah,
There
we-
are places.
If,
in
if,
town-
if,
We
if
have
you
a
look
sign
at our
ordinance.
ordinance, there are no billboards allowed in
I
Frenchtown.
know, well, but that could be changed.
No, I don't
We
think
have
so.
stores. If they don't have, they have, they don't allow
I
historic
do wonder if we
billboards.
could just.
They're gonna put
Historic
the-
billboards.
yes.
Okay.
Hey, we got multiple conversations going. We have multiple conversations going. You were finishing a point?
Don't worry about
The box,
it. Newspaper boxes.
I
Yeah.
wanted to say one more thing.
Yes.
Council, we have hired a new police director. And this week is, Gentner's.
yeah, Mark Ganner and Mike Reno are both retiring.
Is,
Oh,
when is Mark retiring at the end of this week?
Yeah. And
Wow.
when is Mike retiring?
31st.
Oh,
Yeah, both of them.
Right, and our new director, I guess, is starting
He
next week.
started,
Started,
Chris
they've been-
Dwyer. Yep, he's been cross training with Mark
Right.
Gantner.
And what's his name?
Chris Dwyer.
Chris Dwyer.
He is, was a lieutenant in the Reddington Township Police Department for 25 years. And, a lot of local policing background.
Great.
So we brought him on a 1-year contract and, he's looking forward to getting up to speed on everything and get working here, and we're continuing actively try and hire another police officer too.
Yeah,
Right.
Thank you.
Anything else? What else we
We're
got?
gonna pursue some more grants too. The county just announced $1 million parks and recreation grant.
Oh, nice.
So we're gonna pursue that. And we're looking at another grant through local aid for some type of infrastructure project. We're trying to figure out what would be best on that, but that'll probably be dictated by this traffic study a little bit too, to see if we can do something in partnership.
Yeah.
If it makes sense.
Brad, in terms of having the council being able to approve an RFP on the age-friendly thing, do you have to have the contract in place with the state to be able to do that?
As long as we have monies available, once we get the award letter from the state, we're okay. We can-
Okay. I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
because they gave us that silly April 1st starting. date.
Yeah.
So, okay,
But I talked to the purchasing agent.
okay,
And he just said if we could give him a scope of services, what we want, he has the boilerplate template together. He just needs the section for what we're looking.
I can
for.
start that and work with Samantha on it.
Okay,
Okay,
and then he'll put it out to solicit proposals.
Thank you, Jean.
Yeah.
Very good. Anything else this evening? If not, I would, oh, look, I have a gavel again. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Jean, is there a second? Second by John, all in favor, say aye.
all right.
All opposed? There we go.